Hello everyone, welcome to Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services, a video on daily news and editorial analysis, which I'll be covering from the Hindu and Indian Express. Most important news and editorial of the day that is relevant for prelims and mains examination of civil services will be discussed in this session. Let's get started with the news topic list. Today is 12th of November. The first important news that is Supreme Court releases all convict in Rajiv Gandhi assassination case. Second, draft telecom bill and concern of the tech companies. Altitude decide the cements altitude to diet. We'll see how the things actually works in terms of defining the attitudes of the white langurs. Fourth, global corporations on regulations of cryptocurrencies. And the last is an editorial, a quote of the future. Apart from the news and editorial discussion, at the end of this video, there will be MCQ based questions. These questions will be based on current affairs that will help you for the upcoming prelims examination. So without any further delay, let's get started. And before I begin this session, those of you who are new to our channel, do not forget to subscribe Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services on YouTube. If you like this video, if you find this video informative and helpful, do press a like button. So starting the session with the first news, that is Supreme Court releases all convicts in Rajiv Gandhi assassination case, something important for General Studies paper 2 under the subtopic that is structure, organization, function of executive and judiciary. Recently, the Supreme Court of India has directed the premature release of 6 convicts serving the life sentence in the assassination case of the former Prime Minister of India, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. The former Prime Minister of India was assassinated on 21st of May 1991. It was a place in Tamil Nadu called Srimberpudur by a woman suicide bomber, right? I think most of you must be aware of the fact how the thing has happened and how it has changed the Indian politics. Now, premature release request ki baat kare, there are some constitutional provisions, and even for the mains examination, even for the prelims, you will be asked some question in this regard. So you need to understand how things actually work in terms of paradigm and in terms of other conditions. The Supreme Court bench has noted that the Tamil Nadu State Cabinet has recommended the premature release to the governor in September 2018. This was the request that was made by the Tamil Nadu government, right? The governor, instead of talking to a call, has passed this file to the central government, and the governor was bound by the advice of the cabinet cases of the murder and convict under the Now Lapse Terrorism and Dispute Activities Act that was set aside by the Supreme Court itself. Now, there's Article 142 in the constitutions that provide for a discretionary power of the Supreme Court. It's a very important power provided to the Supreme Court under Indian Constitution. And as it states that the Supreme Court in its exercise of its jurisdictions may press through a degree or make such order that is necessary for doing the complete justice of any cause, matter, cases pending before the apex court. Now, before I conclude to this news, something very important that you need to understand is a parodying power, right? Under the constitutional provision and even for the article, there's 72 and 161 that specifically find the mention of parodying power. So parodying power of the president is mentioned under Article 172, and if you talk about the parodying power of the governor, it is under 161, right? So what UPSC can ask you in the prelims examination, direct question आपसे पूछे जा सकते हैं parodying power को लेकर के. This is important for the prelims and same is equally important for the mains examination, right? So the parodying power of the president to grant the pardon extend in the cases where the punishment of the sentence is by a martial court, but Article 161 does not provide such power to the governor. This is the exception that is there. I think you need to study a detail about this. This is already mentioned in the Indian polity book. If you're referring Lakshmikant, it is well and good. All the details has been specifically mentioned in the book, right? Even you can get the supplementary material from our institute that will aid you in clarification of the knowledge. The president can grant a pardon in all cases where the sentence is of the death, but parodying power of the governor does not extend to the death sentence. So these are the two most important points that is relevant for the prelims examination, right? So make sure you're thorough with the points. Now, moving to the other news, that is draft telecom bill and concerns of the tech companies, something important for General Studies paper 2, that is the government policies intervention for the development of various sectors and issues arising from its design and implementation. So the draft bill that proposes to regulate the Indian telecom has proposed a debate among the companies and citizens alike, given a wide scope of debate and impact. So what has actually happened in September 2022, the Department of Telecommunications has released a draft Indian Telecommunication Bill 2022, in which it proposes for the regulations of communication services, which include voice, video, and data offered by over-the-top platform such as WhatsApp and telecommunication service, requiring them to obtain a license from the government just like other telecom operators. Now, ambiguity over the communication services definitions. The Information Technology Industrial Council, the another industries of group that has DOT and the same such as internet-based communication services, interpersonal communication services as a part of telecom services under the proposed bill, and has not defined the definition with clarity and can lead to the regulator over the top and the ambiguity. Now, demand by the tech companies, right? The government should keep internet communication services such as WhatsApp, Google Meet, Signal, and the other internet-based services outside the purview of draft telecommunications bill, including the grouping of the top tech firms, including the Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, and the Microsoft that have said arguing such prescription would not be against a global standard. Now, under the telecom services, अगर बात करें addressing the long-term standing demand की, by telecom operators which have several occasions called a level playing field. So these companies has been demanding a level playing field because of the profit and other things that has to be associated with it. And if it is like in the internet communication services, it should be something that is countering both OTT and other platforms. At present, the telecom companies need a license to offer the services while OTT does not require it. The lack of regulatory mechanism की बात की गई है for the OTT. The Information Technology Industry Council has said that the International Telecommunication Union has not prescribed any regulatory mechanism for the OTT communication services. It added that India has made certain commitment at the World Trade Center for both national treatment and market access for certain telecommunication service with such new licensing procedures that can nullify. The overboard definitions of the telecommunication service will extend to license and authorization remain over the wide range of IT and digital services. Now, in case of non-compliances, the bill also set a significant disproportionate on this particular service provider, which call for both imprisonment and theft prisons. Right? So, fine is also a part of it, and imprisonment can be there. This will be significant for risk of the IT and digital businesses in India, and it will likely to throttle the internet-based innovations and nascent India's startup ecosystem. Right, so the government need to come up with a policy which is actually a regulatory measure and even motivating the other startup, which can flourish the sector as well as Indian economy. Now, altitude decide cement attitude to diet, something important for General Studies paper 3, that is conservation, environmental pollutions, degradation, and EI. According to the new study on the Himalayan grey langur, it was found that the difference in altitude makes the primate species in the same Himalayan habitat choose between the flower and fruit as food option beyond their staple menu of leaves. So this is something that is a staple food for Himalayan langur, but after the change of the altitude, the food pattern changes, right? The Himalayan grey langur is a clumbine, meaning it is a leaf-eating monkey, very important for the prelims perspective. UPSC tend to ask a direct question on this type of species related. It is considered as an endangered species globally, and its population is estimated to be less than 1500 mature individual in 15 to 20 age group. Now, finding of the study के मुताबिक जो primatologist हैं उन्होंने conclude किया that the diet compositions of the 5 such group and even found that Kala Top Kaziar Wildlife Sanctuary in Himachal Pradesh in September and November 2020 and especially concentrated दो group की अगर बात करें Kala Top Forest region में That is an altitude of 2,396 meters. So this is precise the data that is there. And Kaziar, that is there 2188 meters, right? So Kalatop is definitely is the highest group, and they're craving for something which is feeding on different, that is for flower. And or Kaziar ki baat kare, these ate mostly the fruit and the taste changes there. So they have witnessed the changing pattern for the langur, right? So this is the basic changes that they witness. And flower and fruit constitute 11.11% and this is 15.49% of the diet of the two respective groups. Now talking about the habitat, it is found that both in forest and near human habitations, the inhabited area between 2,200 to 4,000 meters mean above the sea level of the subtropical, tropical moist temperature, alpine, coniferous, broadleaf forest, and scrublands. Now, protected status of the Himalayan grey langur, IUCN status की अगर बात करें, these are least concerned. Sites के मुताबिक, this is under Appendix 1, and for the Wildlife Protection Act, this is listed under Schedule 1. Now, global cooperations on the regulations of cryptocurrency, something important for General Studies Paper 3, that is Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization, resource growth, and development. So, addressing the India-US business and economic opportunities, the US Treasury Secretary has said that there is a need for high regulations and global standard to deal with the risk related to cryptocurrencies. Now, the United States has made a good deal of progress, at least in dealing with the issues of illicit finances and connection with the cryptocurrencies. Even in India, the RBI has categorically tell about the cryptocurrencies and the regulation. Even the Bitcoin is prohibited as per the RBI rules and regulations. Now, global regulatory standard की बात की गई है. The US Treasury Secretary has said there's a need for high regulatory standard globally and also need to have a step where we can reduce the cross-border terror payments, right? Now, the US is very actively working in the context of the financial stability. अगर बात करें financial action task force की, and even for the multilateral bank like IMF, उन्होंने global issues को एड्रेस करने के लिए क्रिप्टो करेंसीज के कैसे बेनिफिट्स हो सकते हैं, क्या रिस्क हैं, उसके बारे में बात की. India has repeatedly stressed the need for the global collaborations to deal with the risk related to the cryptocurrencies. And in India, the central bank, that is the Reserve Bank of India, has been cautioning for the users, holder, trades of virtual currencies, saying that dealing of such currencies associated with the potential economic, financial, operational, legal, consumer protection, and security related concern and risk. Now, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework की बात करें, which India is a part. India is a member of Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which is the effort to supply chain and more resilient through tightening with the US. The United States is pursuing an approach called for a friendly shoring to diversify away from the present geopolitical security risk and the supply chain disruption, which has also contributed because of the Russian-Ukraine war, right? And instances के बात करें, US is providing America's largest solar manufacturer with 500 million debt financing to build a facility in the southern Tamil Nadu state, and they're moving out of China as of now. बहुत सारे ऐसे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट्स की अगर बात करें, टेलीफोन की मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हो, सोलर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हो, they're moving out from China and looking forward with India as an option. Now moving to the editorial of the day, a quote of the future, something important for General Studies Paper 2, that is structure, organization and function of executive and judiciary. So what is the issues under this editorial? Talking about the theme is future of the judiciary. The first is future of judiciary, 3 different tasks, functioning of the High Court and judicial governance. Judicial governance is again very important topic for the mains examination. Now, the reach of Indian highest court is or possessive. It is reachable to the lower court, higher court, and other level forms of the judicial body. The Supreme Court, in its final judgment over the decision not only for the High Court or the states, which has 18 High Court and in 28 state and 8 union territories, but also over the tribunals, central and state functioning throughout the India. So Supreme Court is something which is supervising the entire functioning when it's come to the legal matter. And as the law declares, the Supreme Court of India in its pronouncement on the constitutional validity has enacted a law, including the constitutional amendment, is binding to all over the courts in India and even the authorities under Article 140. This is the virtuality that no area of the legislature or executive activity which is beyond the highest court scrutiny. So scrutinization की अगर बात करें, Supreme Court is a AP2. Now, the future of judiciary. The first and foremost, the judiciary is an institution needs to preserve independence. To do this, it must strive to maintain the confidence in public establishment court. The independence of judges is best safeguarded by the judges themselves through the institutions, right? Organizations that law empower themselves to set up, preserve the images, and incorporates higher judiciary that would command respect for the right thinking. Now, other aspect of judicial reform की अगर बात करें, not lacking of the wants of idea. So there has been overwhelmed with innumerable reports in the law commissions which call for like more than 200 of them call for the judicial governance. And against the breach of three justices of the Supreme Court, the judgment diverted in 2005 has called for a fine blueprint which called for the management how to make the recent amendment of our procedures law and work on the ground and to get more class moving along, right? So Supreme Court in its best capacity works to supervise and even monitor the functioning of the lower courts as well. Now there are three different tracks that is actually functioning in India: fast track, normal track, and slow track. So a Salim Advocate Bar Association case, the justice has requested the High Court to implement the detailed blueprint. Most of them were not actually implemented. And they could not direct the High Court to do so because under the constitutional scheme, the autonomous constitutional body is not subject to the administrative direction of the Supreme Court. So this is a limitation that is there with the Supreme Court in terms of providing the administrative directive to the High Courts. The functioning of High Court की अगर बात करें, it has in its capacity now left the largest number of roadblock and delays. The administrative function, the High Court are answerable not to anyone but to themselves, right, in terms of administrative function. Now, this enables the Supreme Court to plead helplessness, hardly good arguably to integrate the court management. So here the point is lacking where the management and integration is essentially required between the High Court and the Supreme Court. It's a time that Supreme Court must entrust with the direct responsibility for the functioning of the High Court, and there should be the judicial governance in entire country, right? Now, judicial governance, as I've told in the beginning, this is very important topic for the mains, and this can be in question in the mains as an analysis part, and the need, right, the futuristic question can be there. So, judicial governance means that all judges who are constitutionally interested with the responsibility for protecting the right of the citizen must be seen as a person of electorate, and even it should have an annual finance disclosure statement, not privately to respective chief but to publicly, right? Now, it is done by the justice of the Supreme Court in the world with the oldest democracy, and in the US, and the appropriate such of the disclosure statement of the judges made public in the world most populous democracy like India. The judges must be an example for the ministers, center, and the state of the member of the parliament and state legislature of the highest official of the government to the follow. Right? This is something which will set a precedent. We can set an example for many other countries and even for government of India and for many other entity that is working for the stakeholders and for the citizen of our country. So this is how the judicial governance can work for the betterment of the functioning of the judiciary in our country. Now moving to the MCQ questions of the day. Before I proceed, just to tell you the answers of yesterday questions. For first question, the correct option is B. For second question, the correct option is C. Today's MCQ for practice. आपको बताना है मिशन वात्सल्य के बारे में. It's aimed to reduce the infant mortality. Under the mission, the National Milk Bank and Lactation Counseling Center were established, right? The second question of the day, Defense Acquisition Council. The Prime Minister of India is the chairman of the council. It was formed after the group of ministers recommended on reforming the national security system post-Kargil war. So do check it out for the correct option. This type of question might be relevant for the upcoming prelims examination. This was all about for the daily news and editorial analysis, followed by the MCQ questions. If you have any other concern, you can let me know. I'll be more than happy to assist you. For time being, I'm signing off. Thank you so much for watching this video.